All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning. I hope we're all doing well. We're going to let folks get settled in here. Give me a one in the chat if you can hear me. There we go. We got folks joining now. Hope everyone's doing well. Going to let folks get settled in. Happy Wednesday to everybody. All right. Good to hear. Good to hear. I cannot believe we're almost halfway through 2025. Where are folks coming in from? I'd love to hear. Uh, I'm based in Los Angeles, California. All right, very good. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for attending today. Um, uh, Really great topic that we've chosen today. For those that may have um, attended our webinars in the past. Generally, I'm joined with Bassam Hamdi, who is our CEO and co-founder. Bassam got called away to jury duty today, of all things. So originally was scheduled to join with us live, got called in for jury duty. When civic duty calls, I guess you have to answer these days, which is a good thing. But rather than miss the chance, obviously, to hear from him entirely, we were able to pre-record yesterday some of his thoughts on this topic. And so throughout the session, you're going to kind of see me pull up some short clips of Bassam Brick's CEO and co-founder talking through some of these ideas and topics that we're going to share today, in particular on where the industry is headed, the role of AI in construction, what we've learned as a company at Brick, working with companies in the construction space, critical industries as well. So he's not here with us live, but his insights are still very much going to be with us. So appreciate y'all listening for this. So a couple of questions before I jump straight into it. How how familiar are we all here with AI? So like let's just put it on a scale of 1 to 5. One being, you know, very, very little, five being we're already rolling out AI programs, maybe we're piloting things, or you've even built some stuff in-house. Love to hear some numbers on that. Okay. All right, so everyone's pretty good. We got a six there. That's love that. I love that. I love the six. That's great. Okay, let me just share my screen here. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think, look, I think at this point, most of us are very much, familiar with the concepts of AI. We may be using it internally. Look, I can speak from my own experience. I run a lot of the go-to-market efforts at Brick. That's kind of sales and marketing. There's a lot of opportunities for AI. We personally have, I know we're a tech company. We've cut down on hundreds of thousands of dollars in software spend just from a marketing perspective by deploying AI. So think about things like, Chat GPT. Obviously, one of the biggest things that we use is automation. Um, and that's really not an area of AI that I think a lot of people really pay attention to. Um, so I think it's important for us to, when we start talking about this topic, some of the plays that we see companies run, some of the ways that our customers think about the ROI of this, okay, is to really kind of set the stage and say, okay, what really is AI when we talk about it, especially from a construction perspective, right? Because um, if you were to Google AI, there's, I mean, hundreds of different categories, and so I'm going to share a quick clip of Bassam. Um, you know, when we talk about AI, here's how we like to think about it. So I'll play this clip.
It's very cloudy. It's like when a lot of people say AI, they're actually saying things like, it's almost like saying, how will software help you? Like, it's so non-specific. It's very difficult to get into the nitty-gritty. And, we started in construction. Like, we started very strongly in construction. That's where I'm from. That's the construction tech background. But then we expanded into so many different industries at this point. And regardless of where I start, the laggard industries or the future forward industries, they all have the same general question. It's like, what is a practical use case of AI? And honestly, I hate that question. So I
Hmm.
want to start with a very basic concept. AI is not a thing. AI is a label. AI is not, again, you've heard me say this many times, Ellis, and you've said it many times. AI is like saying car or truck.
Hmm.
It's like a 5-year-old saying like truck. It's AI needs to be segmented into three very distinct things. There's a fourth thing that doesn't affect any of us, but the three things are generative AI, which is a human asking a question of a machine, response from the machine that is novel and informative.
Hmm.
AI automation was the simulation of human based tasks, what we do mainly, robotic tasks that simulate human behavior, human thought to get the job done. We augment and in some places replace human workers where they need to, add more staff.
Hmm.
And then there's predictive. That is the idea. And there's going to be part of this in the webinar, and you and Pat are going to crush it tomorrow. There's part of this in the webinar where we're going to talk about predictive. So I think the number one question is like, where do you start with AI? And the real point here isn't that you start anywhere that I'm going to tell you where to start. You already know where you're understaffed. You already know where there is issues. You already know where you need to augment your employee base. And I think what a lot of software companies are failing right now is specifically traditional software companies like Salesforce, the Procores, the old stodgy legacy workflow based systems where a human has to come to the machine and type is they're clouding the discussion about what AI is. They're like,
Hmm.
we're adding AI to our platform. It's like a horse and carriage, saying I'm adding a car to my platform. These are different things. So I think the first thing, I'm avoiding answering your question, but the first thing that we start with is you need to understand AI before you know how to use it.
Yes. Understanding AI before you use it. And I think to some extent, and that's why I'm really happy to see a lot of the folks here are familiar with it. Um, and I think like one of the biggest challenges that we have, you know, implementing and talking about AI with contractors is that a lot of people are kind of afraid of it. And I think there's this uh, belief that you have to have a lot of resources internally to build this, and that's not the case. Obviously, for some of the buckets of AI and particularly the predictive bucket, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about the predictive bucket here. But there's obviously you'll need some more resources to do this. The first two categories that we see most contractors using AI today are in generative AI and automation AI. Okay, back in the like in the early 2000s, there was a concept called robotic process automation, and it's this idea that you can build a bot that clicks into different software applications. This was used extensively in the financial world in the mid 2000s, where they would execute trades with bots. If some stock meets a certain criteria, execute a trade, whether it's buying or selling. Okay. um, Ticketmaster uses these things to, when a concert set of tickets goes on sale, Ticketmaster goes in, uses bots to buy these things. There are good bots, there are bad bots. um, This same technology is being used to create these things that we call digital workers. And basically, what we're doing is, in the olden days, you would tell the bot exactly what to do, and it would execute those tasks. What we're seeing today with the use of AI is the ability to give a bot a task or give it a goal and say, hey, this is what we want you to accomplish. You then feed that robot thousands or millions of examples of that task being done, and then it reverse engineers the process for you. Okay. So we're still that concept is called a large action model, very similar to the large language model. Generative AI, what they did is they fed these transformers, they call them, every single piece of text from the internet. And now you can ask it questions, have it write you emails, research papers, and it generates text, right, to the best of its ability, mimicking how a human would speak. And so that's using language. On the automation front with large action models, we're using it with actions in software. And so the beauty of using generative AI and automation AI together is, with a chatbot, ChatGPT is great, but it doesn't know your applications, right? It doesn't know how you use, Sage or Procore, or I'd be curious to hear what other accounting or field systems folks are using. But with using generative AI and automation together, you can build essentially a chatbot that is trained on your data and that is trained on how to use your software. So I can chat a um, into a chatbot to say, "Hey, go and create an RFI in Procore for me, and here are the details." I put it into the chatbot. It logs in to Procore and enters that data in for me. Okay. So I think for most people on the generative side, companies or contractors that we speak to are using Copilot or they're using Chat GPT to some extent. No one has really gone in and built their own GPT. The problem is, like, if you were to dump, let's say, financial data from your business into Chat GPT, that data does get shared, right? I don't actually recommend doing that. Instead, what there's technologies out there, and Brick is one of them, obviously, where you can start to build your own GPTs that are trained on your own data. So, and look, this is something I've given this talk several times in the past year, but you know, I used to say, "Oh, we're going to see that in the next 2 years, where companies can build their own GPTs, where I can ask it questions rather than going into Sage and running a report on, show me all the cost codes that are, over budget." That's something that can be done today, and there are companies that are doing that, and it's not just large companies, by the way, that are able to do this. The technology exists. Okay. Um, Automation is great as well, and towards the end of this, I'm going to talk through some specific use cases, playbooks that we see companies run using, in particular, automation. I think automation probably has one of the best, I would say, ROI metrics today, just because of the time savings of that. And we'll talk a little bit about how we think about that. Let me talk about predictive for a moment. There's a lot that you can do with predictive. Is not there yet. I have not seen it. I've seen very few companies in construction use predictive AI well. What I do see companies doing is doing things like time series models, regressive analysis, anomaly detection, where I can take, let's say I can forecast revenue, where I can take, with a regressive model, I can take all of the historical data I have in terms of how my revenue gets burned off over the duration of a project. Okay, I can build a regressive model there. And then as I recognize revenue month over month, I can compare those to my time series. And if I start to see variance, say, hey, this you're recognizing, 20% less revenue on this type of job than you have in the past, flag that for me. Okay. Is that really predictive? Probably not. Um, I'll give you an example. Amazon, company with a lot of resources, has an initiative to predict what people buy on Amazon, right? That would be very valuable to them to know what people will buy ahead of time before they buy it. Today, they can predict about 1 in every 20 things. One in every 20 items bought on their e-commerce site, they're able to predict. So about a 5% hit rate. If Amazon could predict 50%, 60%, 18 out of 20 things, right? It changes their business model completely. They switch from having you buy it first and then shipping it to you to what they call anticipatory shipping model, where they send you items before you even buy them. Okay. Changes their supply chain completely, changes the whole business model. Now, they filed a patent for this in 2013. I have not personally been sent packages that I did not yet order from Amazon. Okay. And that was over a decade ago. So clearly, even companies like Amazon, even companies like Google, have yet to really crack this to a scale that allows them to change the business model. Now, certainly, Amazon uses regression analysis, some type of prediction in designing their supply chains, um, but it's not at a production scale quite yet. Um, Bassam and I actually also have a podcast, I hate to drop the podcast on everybody, but we go into detail on using on what on predictive AI and some of the use cases that we see. I'm going to share it with everybody here, an external link. It's up in the upper right hand corner there. Highly recommend you listen to it. I think if you're looking, one thing I will say on the predictive front here, prevention is prediction. Okay, if you can prevent something from happening, it's almost as good as predicting it in the first place, right? So, I think prevention comes from doing things faster. Teaching bots how to do things faster helps you prevent those issues. So, when I think about those three categories, what has the highest ROI? What should I prioritize? Okay, if I'm looking to cut costs, if I'm looking to use AI to actually make a meaningful impact in the business, where do I focus? I'll play another clip of Bassam when I asked him this same question.
Personally believe you need to start with automation, and that's not just a bias for Brick. I think starting with generative, and I had another conversation with the legal team at a large client of ours, and they were talking about generatively creating contract terms and conditions out of the knowledge of what works, what claims have been won in the past, having that contract be generated by AI. And I think I'm like, that's a fantastic idea. And then I stopped the conversation and I did something that most folks in tech don't do. I said, so what is the golden thread from that moment where AI is generating the contract to you getting a return on investment? Like, how much money are we really saving? And, they were frank. They said, maybe 4 hours of legal, it's a junior, maybe 4 or 5 grand. When you ask yourself that question, frankly, I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze. So you've heard me say this many times, the putt for dough, drive for show, putt for dough. I know we've had golfers say, listen, driving is more important, but these are examples, golfers. Thank you. Stop commenting. The idea here is that there are two apexes of return on investment that you must understand before you begin endeavoring in AI. One is, how many person hours am I going to save from essentially taking something a human does and offsetting it to a machine? So, for example, if I say that the email that's coming in from, let's say, the AP invoice group, or the procure to paid group, the email is going to come in, that purchase order is going to be analyzed, and then ultimately put into an accounting system as a commitment. And then that invoice is going to come in, and we're going to match the PO to the invoice, and then a human might give it a thumbs up, and then we're done. If I could take a group of people that generally are, 10 people in my AP group and take them down to 8, then that's a great place to start as a
Mm,
company. So procure to pay is a great place to start. A lot of folks think that. But sometimes there's bias there. And that bias is not here in my heart. Although half of the folks at Brick that start with Brick, half of our clients generally start with procure to pay workflows, purchase orders,
mm,
contracts, subcontracts, payments against either POs or subcontracts or uncommitted payments. And God love them. It's a good implementation. Ultimately, that's where a lot of folks start. My heart lies in different areas. I think risk management is the right place to start. Why do I think that? You're saving time, and the cost of a mistake is astronomically higher. And so
mm,
while people want to say, hey, with AI, I can save time, and that's the number one apex at the moment. I want to save time. Time is finite at a company. If you have 100 employees, you're not going to go to zero.
mm,
So you might save 2 or 3, which is great. Or you might not have to fill those recs. Or you might be able to scale the company 30% with the same number of people. Fantastic. But ultimately, number of humans that you're adding or subtracting is finite. The cost of a mistake is infinite in some
mm,
cases. There's a wonderful company out of Boston that is no longer. It was a company called McComber. It was a 100-year-old company, ended because of a safety incident.
mm.
I'm not saying AI could have fixed that,
Right.
but one incident ended that company.
Mm,
One AP invoice being a couple of days late doesn't end a company. So my point for everybody on this webinar is, and this is a challenger position because we sell a lot of procure to pay. I think we're going to probably process 1 million invoices this year, Ellis.
wow.
So, that's great. And we're going to ultimately have probably 36 million automation minutes against the procure to pay workflow. I think that is a good place to start. But I think people need to start thinking outside the box, thinking a little bit grander, and start thinking about where does the risk lie at the cost of a mistake. And so that apex moment, Ellis, is that we think about time saved, and that's a good way to pay for software. Save time, pay for robots essentially. Save human time, swipe in a robot that is cheaper.
Mm,
Robots don't have minimum wage. We all know that. But when you think about what the real return is, you think in your mind, yes, I'm saving one person here in an area where the cost of the mistake could be $500,000 to $1 million. I make the wrong call in an insurance. I don't see that insurance is expired. I don't understand the certificate system. I make a mistake with my client. That's $1 million mistake. That is where I want people to start realizing we should focus. And there's a reason, Ellis. It's because 5 years ago, our robots were not that smart.
mm,
Our robots now, ChatGPT call it reasoning. I call it instinct. We've added instinct to our robots that allows them to make more complex decisions than we used to be able to do. And those more complex decisions, those business exception decisions where they raise a hand and say, hey, this insurance certificate looks fake, or this timesheet is missing, or we are not burning enough time in order to make our schedule. That instinct that a human used to have is where the real return on investment in this very, very umbrella term AI exists.
Yeah. And so I think this is a really important point to make. When you're looking at AI, and look, some of the folks here, if you're using it as an individual in your own business, or like in your own role, I should say, what are you going to pay for ChatGPT? Right? Some of us may be paying $20 a month. Some may be paying, the $200 a month, whatever. Maybe Copilot's included in what you're already doing. Those are not, that might make an impact in your day to day, but when you're thinking about rolling this out, generative AI and automation AI in particular, at an enterprise level to an entire department, it's really important to think about, okay, how do I think about the cost of doing this versus the return? And so here's the way when we think about, the cost element in this equation. here are the three things that we push our customers to think about. The first is, let me take like a workflow in the business. How often is that done today? If it's something that I'm paying, a high value employee to do, and they do that thing every single day, 5 times a day, 10 times a day, that's probably a great place to start. If it's not done often, then there's probably not a high return. If it's something that you do as an individual and you're using ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude to use, it probably does not have a high impact on the investment. The other question we ask is, how often is that task done in the future? So if you're growing 30% clip, hey, I have, I'm processing 500 invoices a month today. I'm going to be growing 30 to 50% over the next 10 years, next 3 years. I'm going to have to add new headcount, right? That is a great opportunity to look at automating a process, right? High frequency that has processing an invoice. Look, if an invoice gets missed, it's a pain, but it's not going to put the company out of business unless it's a really big invoice and it's at the end of a job. But typically, like those areas where it's like, hey, if something doesn't get processed, it's fine. I can start there. The third place is, what's the cost of mistake? And this is the most important one. If it's something that is high frequency and missing it could put the company out of business, and that's, Bassam, that clip mentions risk management, right? If a vendor proceeds on a job without their certificate of insurance, if that document is lapsed, you're at real risk. The business is at real risk. Not billing fast enough, not billing on time, not collecting payments. Those are things that have a high impact on the business. So when you think about, okay, I'm using generative AI, I'm using automation AI, where are those tasks in the business? And the way we think about it is, how often is it done today? How often will it be done in the future? And what's the cost of a mistake? For everything else, right? If it's low frequency, high impact, making decision on go or no go on a job, for example, working with customers, building those relationships, those are places where we see humans should really spend more time. Okay. So, again, in some cases, we don't find ourselves going in and replacing people. Generally, what we find is, robots, generative models are going in and taking work off of people's plates. We're replacing tasks, not people. And in some cases, look, we're trying to hire people in construction. It's very difficult to do that. We know for every, one person hired in construction, 2 people are retiring. So we always find it that it's helpful to backfill roles that needed to be filled anyway. So once you kind of think through the different technologies, generative and automation, you kind of think through your workflows. How do you actually put this into practice? And I think that's where the idea of a playbook comes into play. And I'm going to share a clip of Bassam talking about his perspective on the AI playbook, and then I'm going to share some specific areas in the business where we see these technologies being deployed and some of the actual workflows that they're being used on.
I think this is the hardest one for executives, because give you an example, when I was an executive at software companies in my past, we had to make a decision: email marketing tool, CRM tool, accounting tool. You make this big decision, it takes 6 months, a year to implement. You wait another year and you hope for an ROI of some kind, right? That blow up that playbook with AI. That is not how AI works. What I want the playbook to be, and for people to understand the playbook to be, is small wins that you get within 60, 90, 120 days. The playbook is, take the big buffet of problems that you have, and there are many. Take a very small plate, take the little bits that you can fix quickly with a partner that is honest, frank, and very, very challenger like Brick, and say, hey, while we have all these problems, I can take this one slice of the world and fix that one slice and automate that one slice. And I go from managing 2,000 invoices a month to managing 1,200 invoices a month. That is a win. So the playbook, in my opinion, is Take a look at that massive problem set, but atomize it, chunk it to smaller little subcomponents that you believe a machine can help you with. And whether that subcomponent is, you know, managing owner mandated systems like Textura or your owner's general, the owner's project management solution, taking that win, take quick wins. Because the thing we learned, Ellis, is that the software playbook doesn't work for AI. It just simply doesn't. This isn't implementing an accounting system. You
Right.
don't have to wait for a big bang. You're not waiting for financial statements at the end of the month. If you can get a win with AI within 60 days, take the win, take the shot. And I think the playbook here is you don't want to be on the sidelines at the end of this, because your competitors are saving time, automating, and having foresight that if you don't have, you're going to be bidding at lower margins or at higher prices, and ultimately you will be a dinosaur. And that by far, this is the moment where you have to accept that reality.
Right. So starting small. I think this is the most important thing to remember. I say this to folks all the time. Brick, yeah, we're a tech company, but we're not really a software company. We don't want you logging into our application. We build robots. That's what we do. We build robots that you can communicate with, that you can turn on and off, and that you can manage like little digital workers in the business. When they are successful, you do not interact with them. Okay. 80% of the processes that I'm just about to walk through should be done without a human touching them. Okay. Now, there are some workflows that do require more human intervention, and that's fine. But I want you to think of, when you're implementing an AI software like Brick, you're doing it in little pieces. And so you're identifying workflows in the business, and you're implementing pieces of that workflow a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. These are the four kind of main departments that we see being automated using generative AI and automation AI. Um, Obviously, I think finance is a great area where these can be deployed. Um, the procure to pay workflow is, as Bassam mentioned, where we see most of these digital robots being deployed. Reading an invoice, matching that invoice to a purchase order, automatically allocating that based on a set of rules that you define, and then taking that invoice, having the bot log into your accounting system and type in the details of that invoice into your accounting system. And as the human, what I see at the end of that workflow is essentially a log. Hey, here are all the invoices that were processed. This went well, this one matched, this one didn't match. Maybe you have to handle the anomalies. Hey, you said to flag anything from this vendor over $5,000. Here are those flags that you asked me to surface, right? So, um, finance is a great workflow. And I know I'm running over a couple of minutes here, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. Building out forecasts. If you're building things in Excel today, listen, Excel is a great application. We've taught robots how to build models in Excel for you. So if there's a report that gets generated every single month, whether it's a WIP or a forecast or some kind of project report, we had a customer who every PM built a PowerPoint presentation for the customer about the updates on the job. They were logging in, taking screenshots of Power BI and CMIC. We taught a bot how to build those. They push a button and the bot logs into these different applications, takes screenshots, puts it together and emails it to them. Okay, so project reporting, these bots are great at doing that. Um, Operations, setting up jobs. There's in most companies there's a workflow where you're awarded a job, or if you're on the specialty side, you're an HVAC, you have service jobs, you set it up in Excel. Someone then takes that in the home office and logs in and sets that job up in multiple places. We've taught these software robots to do that automatically, and I'll talk through a couple of examples of that. Owner mandated systems. If you're working with owners that require your GC, and you're required, or even a sub required to use Procore, Textura, Newforma, eBuilder, right? And you've got PMs logging data between both applications. think of this as kind of a de facto integration, but it's not really an integration because there's no API connection. It's really just taking data from one system. The bot takes that information, logs into the other system, and enters that data in. Okay, great place to use automation AI. Risk management. This is one that Bassem mentioned. Um, Certificates of insurance, right? Whenever one of these COIs lapses, obviously you need to get a new document from the vendor. We've taught bots how to send emails, essentially to do outreach, right? Starting at 30 days, they'll start sending emails to that vendor. Hey, we need your updated documentation. We need your updated documentation. 7 days out, it emails every single day. Eventually, you'll have bots that can make phone calls and speak. And if any of y'all have done research on some of the AI voice stuff, it's kind of scary. I will be honest with you, but that is in the future where that could be something that's completely done. And most companies today, this is very time consuming, and it takes away the time from for really really working with vendors that are higher priority. Especially if you have vendors who are no longer working with you, and you still have to keep that documentation up to date. It's a real time suck. And this is my personal favorite business development. Is we have taught these robots to go to sources where you might look for new work, municipal sites. We've even taught these robots how to read the meeting minutes of a city council meeting and extract potential opportunities that may have been discussed in that meeting, right? Greenlighting certain development projects, and then bringing those in and adding them to your CRM as a potential lead. Okay, essentially think about how as a business development manager that goes out and does the work of sourcing opportunities for you, always constantly listening 24/7, bringing those in and surfacing those to you. Great use case for robots. And then of course, building out some of the forecasts that we talked about. This is also a good opportunity for some of that regression analysis with revenue forecasting that I mentioned. So if you wanted to take historic jobs and kind of build these curves, this is a good opportunity to provide that as well. So I'll give you some examples that we see. This is one. So that is the job setup on operations. This is a relatively uh, mid-sized MEP contractor out of Austin, Texas, running Sage 100 Advanced and Procore. So they came to us with this problem where they have an entire team. There's about 6 people who are in charge of setting up jobs. Estimator fills out an Excel file. They get that Excel file. They go into Sage 100 and fill it out. It takes, they do about 50 a week. It's a lot. Some of the jobs are smaller. Some of the jobs are larger. When the file is completed, they fill out all the details about the job, the cost codes, the budgets. Those 5, 6 clerks are then just entering data from Excel into Sage all day long. That's what they do. And so what was happening is field teams were working, they would start work before the backlog of job setups could get processed, right? The in-house budget adjustments, the change orders, all of those things are just sitting backlog. Meanwhile, field teams are working. They don't even have the budget set up. Okay, they're just keeping it in their own Excel file. Causes a lot of rework on the back end. Sometimes jobs would get done before the budgets were even set up. Okay, and then the clerk's time, who by the way was the accounts receivable team, who's also in charge of getting the billings out, was spending almost half of their time on this process. Okay, so this obviously causes a lot of downstream issues. The CFO that we were, working with on this was seeing a lot of issues in the WIP as well. And so what we did, and the great thing about using robots is that you don't change the process. They keep doing this in Excel. I don't have to, they didn't have to go and train their estimators on a new software. We kept everything in that Excel template they were using. We created a tab in that Excel workbook that pulled in all of the relevant data that needed to be entered into Sage. Okay. They take that file when it's ready, they put it into a SharePoint folder. Every single day, our little robot goes into that folder and pulls those files in, opens up the document, and reads that staging tab. Reads the job number, the location, the PM, the estimator, the cost codes, the budgets, the labor hours, labor budgets. Logs into Sage and creates those budgets and creates the job. They do the same thing for change orders and in-house budget adjustments as well. It's the same template. So they went from 30 on average, 30 days of waiting for budgets to be for jobs to be set up to 0.3 days, 100% increase in speed. Now, is this a workflow that, increases margins by 10%? Probably not. But this is a great example of that start small, 60, 90-day win, where it's a workflow that's very repetitive, right? This means that now the AR team, not only can jobs get set up faster, but they have more time to focus on billings. Okay. And by the way, this all happens in the background. For the people that touch this workflow, nothing has changed. All of it's just happening in the background instead. I'll give you one for risk management. So we had a customer that was doing certified payroll. I'm not sure if anyone does government work and uses LCP tracker. The CFO every single month had to go in and download certified payroll reports, sign them, and then upload them back into LCP tracker. Took her about 6 hours a month. We built a software robot, logs into LCP tracker, downloads the report, reads the document, looks for any anomalies in that certified payroll report that we put in our rules engine. It then adds the electronic signature and emails that report to the right party. Now, 6 hours a month, that's a great place to start from an investment perspective and to grow into. But if you're using, if you're having to download something, a document, sign it, re-upload it, great place to use AI. Took her less than an hour a month. And by the way, the bot did it better. She says there's a case study on our website about it, stall construction. I recommend going in to read it. 5 times faster. The last one here I mentioned is the owner mandated system. This is a larger GC. If you're a larger GC and you're using a lot of owner mandated systems, the PMs were creating change orders in CMIC. They would then have to log into eBuilder and create that same change order. They call it the PCI in CMIC. They were also having to download Excel files, fill out the PCI in CMIC, download an Excel template, fill out the exact same information, and then upload the Excel file into eBuilder and fill out the details for that change order in eBuilder. It was a long process. Now, the PM was able to do it quickly. He had to do it probably, I don't know, 3-4 times a week. Took him 30 minutes to do per one. But if you think about a company that has 150 project managers, each doing this process, there's a lot of waste there. So we think project management autopilot is a great place to start. So I'm over time here. I'm happy to take any questions. What I would recommend doing, if you want to see some of this stuff in more detail, we do have a demo request site, brick.com/demo. We can show you some of these bots in action. If you have, specific workflows in mind that you wanted to automate, we're happy to walk through those with you. If you want to say, hey, look, here's how we do it today. How would we automate this? We're happy to walk through that with you. I would say there's no workflow too small to start with. So don't self-edit and kind of self-censor on what you bring to the table. It's better to start small and grow from there than to try to automate some really big meaty workflow first, right? Very good. Well, thanks everybody for attending. I hope this was helpful and kind of gave you some insight into some of the things that we're doing with the software robots on the AI front. I'll drop the link to the demo page here. Let's see. And yeah, if you have any questions or wanted to learn more about how this process works, head over to the website, and we'd be happy to go into more detail. Well, thanks everybody for your time today, for attending, and we hope to see you on the next one. Thanks.